The obstacle is the way. Imagine you're walking down a familiar path when suddenly you encounter a massive boulder blocking your way. Your first instinct might be frustration, perhaps even anger at this unexpected impediment to your progress. You scan left and right, looking for ways around it, considering whether to turn back entirely. But then something curious happens. As you examine this obstacle more closely, you begin to notice handholds carved into its surface, almost as if it were placed there not to stop you, but to teach you how to climb. This presents us with one of the most profound paradoxes in human experience. The very things that seem designed to defeat us often become the precise tools we need for growth. How can our greatest challenges simultaneously be our greatest teachers? The Stoic philosophers recognized something that defies our immediate emotional responses to difficulty. They observed that obstacles don't merely obstruct our path, they actually become the path itself. This isn't positive thinking or wishful reframing. It's a fundamental recognition that resistance creates strength, that friction generates heat, and that the universe seems structured in such a way that our development requires exactly the challenges we'd prefer to avoid. What makes this paradox so compelling is how it inverts our natural relationship with difficulty. We spend enormous energy trying to eliminate problems from our lives, yet every meaningful growth we've ever experienced has emerged from wrestling with something that initially felt impossible. On one hand, obstacles appear as pure impediments. They slow us down, force us to expend energy we hadn't planned to use, and often arrive at precisely the moments we feel least equipped to handle them. You've experienced this. The job loss that comes just as bills are mounting, the relationship conflict that surfaces during your busiest week, the health scare that emerges when you finally felt like life was settling into a comfortable rhythm. On the other hand, when you trace back through your life's most significant periods of growth, they almost invariably cluster around these same difficult moments. The job loss that forced you to discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed. The relationship struggle that taught you to communicate with honesty you'd been avoiding. The health challenge that clarified what truly mattered versus what you'd been treating as urgent. Consider how a river encounters a mountain. The water doesn't see the rock as an ally, it simply flows around it, over it, through it. In doing so, the river carves canyons of breathtaking beauty. The mountain shapes the water's path, but the water shapes the mountain in return. Neither fights the encounter, both are transformed by it. You begin to wonder if your obstacles operate by similar principles, sculpting and being sculpted simultaneously. Think about the skills you're most proud of developing. Chances are they emerged not from comfortable practice sessions, but from moments when you had no choice but to stretch beyond your perceived limits. The parent who discovers patience they never knew they had when caring for a colicky infant. The student who develops discipline after failing a crucial exam. The entrepreneur who learns resourcefulness when their business faces near bankruptcy. The paradox deepens when you realize that we often seek out artificial obstacles in areas where we want to grow. You voluntarily lift weights to build physical strength, even though lifting heavy objects is fundamentally uncomfortable. You choose challenging books, complex puzzles, difficult conversations, not because they're easy, but because their resistance creates the very development you seek. Yet when life presents natural obstacles, your first impulse is often to resist the resistance. This suggests something profound about the architecture of growth itself. Perhaps consciousness develops not in spite of challenges, but because of them. Perhaps the obstacle isn't interrupting your path. Perhaps it is revealing what your path actually is. When you examine this pattern across human history, you find that every breakthrough, every innovation, every leap forward in understanding emerged from someone encountering what seemed like an insurmountable problem. The Wright brothers didn't invent flight by avoiding the challenge of gravity. They learned to work with it. Marie Curie didn't advance science by choosing easy research questions. She pursued mysteries that had stumped entire generations. The greatest artists didn't create their masterpieces by avoiding creative constraints. They used limitations as the very framework for innovation. The Stoics understood that this principle applies equally to internal development. Your character isn't built during comfortable moments. It's forged in the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. That space, which often feels like pure difficulty, is actually where your agency lives. The obstacle forces you to discover resources you didn't know you had, to develop flexibility you hadn't needed before, to access wisdom that only emerges under pressure. This realization begins to shift something fundamental in how you relate to difficulty. Instead of seeing obstacles as evidence that something has gone wrong, you begin to recognize them as signs that something is about to go differently. The challenge isn't trying to eliminate all resistance from your life. That would be like trying to build muscle by avoiding all weight. The challenge is learning to engage with resistance skillfully. You start to notice that the moments when you feel most alive, most present, most authentically yourself, often cluster around times when you're rising to meet something difficult, not because you enjoy suffering, but because obstacles have a way of cutting through the superficial concerns that usually occupy your attention and connecting you directly with what actually matters. Consider how athletes speak about their relationship with training. The resistance isn't something to be endured, it's the very mechanism through which improvement happens. The weight doesn't fight against the muscle, it partners with the muscle to create strength. The distance doesn't oppose the runner, it collaborates with the runner to build endurance. You begin to wonder if all obstacles might operate as partners in disguise. This doesn't mean that obstacles feel pleasant or that you should seek out unnecessary difficulty. It means recognizing that when obstacles do arise, and they inevitably will, they're not interrupting your development. They are your development, arriving in the form most precisely calibrated to teach you what you're ready to learn next. As you settle into this understanding, something relaxes in your relationship with uncertainty. You don't need to have all the answers before difficulties arise. You don't need to prevent all challenges from reaching your door. The obstacles that come are often exactly the ones equipped to expand your capacity for the life you're growing into. Tonight, as you reflect on the challenges currently present in your life, consider the possibility that they're not evidence that something has gone wrong. Perhaps they're evidence that something is about to go more right than you previously imagined possible. It's not about solving every difficulty immediately. It's about noticing that the path and the obstacle might be, in some mysterious way, the same thing.